Hello YouTube and welcome to Full Dottle, a channel dedicated to tamping topics such as pipes, tobacco, lore, and more. I am your host, the Bearded Briarman, and without further ado, let's get lit. Welcome back everyone, and on this episode of Full Dottle, I'm going to be giving my full review of Cornell Diehl's Winchester. Little housekeeping first. I am smoking a 7LE673KS rusticated cocktail with Winchester in it. Alright, so I'm doing a lot of changes on this channel. I'm trying to tighten up my reviews so that they're not quite as long as they used to be. We'll see where that goes. I'll put a picture right over here somewhere and show you what the new setup looks like. See if we can... Got a whiteboard to write down all of my information, and I've also got a timer to try to keep me on track. Anyway, as I said, this is a VABur, but the interesting thing about this blend is the burleys in them are processed as a black Cavendish. During my first impressions, I spoke about it as if it were black Cavendish with burleys added, but that's not the case. The black Cavendish that is in this is unsweetened, and they are processed from burleys, so keep that in mind. For the 10 aroma, I gave this a 5. To me, it smells a lot like Blue Diamond chocolate-covered almonds, and it has hints of cedar and hickory. Smells wonderful, and since it's unflavored and unsweetened, I'm going to give it a 5 for that. For sufficiently dry, I also gave it a 5. It's ready to smoke right out of the bag. Remember, this is a bulk blend, so right out of the bag, it was sufficiently dry for me. With fruity, nutty, and woody, I did catch just a little bit of the darker fruits with the Red Virginias, but not much on the fruity side of it. So I didn't really put that into my computations here. But for the nutty and woody, I gave it a 3. The black Cavendish muted all of the burley type flavors in it, because once you process as a black Cavendish, a lot of times it will neutralize the tobacco. But the woody and nutty flavors that are in the burleys are still present. They're just subdued a little bit because of the processing of the leaf. You also get just a little bit of a light almond type flavor from this. It was a very interesting, the black Cavendish in this was very interesting. On spice, I gave it a 2.5. It's very mild, but on a retrohale, if you exhale exclusively through your nose, you can catch just a little bit of spice from this. At the end of the bowl, toward the end of the bowl, it did build just a little bit, and you will be able to see that spice a lot more noticeable. So for that, I gave it a 2.5. Otherwise, you're not going to catch a lot of spice with this blend. On tang, I gave it a 3. The Red Virginias do give a little bit of that rye berry malted grain type flavor. It's just very muted by the black Cavendish, but it's still present, so I gave it a 3 for tang. On sweetness, I gave it a 4. It's not as sweet as the Escudo Navy Deluxe, but it's very close. It's only a few shades under that. So for sweetness, I gave it a 4. On depth, I gave it a 3. It really should have been higher. I wanted to give it a higher grade, but the Red Virginias were just muted way too much in this. I'm not saying that that is a negative thing necessarily, because it presents itself in its own way. But in order for it to have a lot of depth, I would have had to taste each layer vividly. And the Red Virginias were just a little too muted in this. So for depth, I gave it a 3. On complexity, I gave it a 3.5. The layers are clearly present. They're all there. You get the nuttiness, the woodiness, that dry type smoke from the burleys. You get a little bit of the tangy, darker fruit, very mildly, the rye berry and malted grains from the red Virginias, and the black Cavendish adds another dimension to this, a new level of complexity with its sweetness, and it's in between the sweetness like a more robust molasses and a lighter honey. It's kind of in between there. But the black Cavendish in this really created a dimension that is very unique to this blend. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and it gives you a lot of those layers. Even though the black Cavendish is muting out a lot of the other flavors, they're still present. You can still pick them apart very easily. So for that reason, I gave it a 3.5 on complexity. If the red Virginias would have been just a little bit more deep on this, if the flavors would have been deeper, it could have easily been a 4 or a 4.5 on complexity, because this blend has a lot to offer. The black Cavendish just mutes it just enough for me to have to turn it down a little bit. On balance, I gave it a 3. Again, all of the layers play very well together. They're not necessarily competing. It's just that that black Cavendish is a little too dominant. It's just a little too aggressive in it. So for that reason, on balance, I gave it a 3. On smoothness, it's one of the smoothest blends I've ever smoked. I gave it a 4.5. The only thing that gives it any type of a rough, slightly rough edge is that little spice that you're going to get that slightly builds toward the end of the bowl. It's not unpleasant at all. Even somebody who doesn't like a lot of spice in their tobacco is not going to really have, they're not really going to find this spice, but it is present, and I don't think it's going to bother even the most sensitive of smoker. So for that, on smoothness, I gave it a 4.5. If it didn't have that spice at all, I could have easily given this a 5 because it is a very smooth blend. For the high point of the bowl, I gave it a 3.5. This had just enough of the red Virginias in it to keep me satisfied. I love red Virginias, and they're present enough that I really enjoyed it. The black Cavendish, even though it muted the red Virginias, it offers a new dimension to the complexity of this. Being a burley that has been processed as a black Cavendish, you're getting 2 different types of layers from the same leaf, and it gives you, it just gives you a unique dimension to it that I haven't experienced before in many other blends. So for that, I gave the high point a 3.5. All right, we're back. I had to plug in the computer. The battery was about to die. So on the high point, I gave it a 3.5. On the low point, I gave it a 2. The red Virginias were there, but they were held back so much that it did affect the way that I would grade this blend. And like I've said before, the low point of the bowl is not necessarily a negative view of this blend. It's just what I liked least about it. And that's hard to do for a blend that you really like, to find what you liked least about it. Especially if you really like it, it's hard to find something at all that you don't like. But for me, the reason that this got a low mark on the low point of the bowl was because the black Cavendish absolutely muted the red Virginias, enough that I had to grade it at a 2 for low point of the bowl. For burns cool, this got a 5. There's not very many blends out there that I've had burn this cool. It didn't try to heat my bowl very much at all, and I smoked it pretty aggressively when I was testing it. A lot of times when I'm doing reviews, I take several days, I drink it with water, or I smoke it with water, I smoke it with a sweet drink, and I smoke it with a bitter drink. And that way I can try to get the varying levels of the flavors that it offers. But with this, and while I'm doing it sometimes, like with the Navy or the Escudo Navy Deluxe, the harder you smoke it, the more rough it will become, and sometimes it'll offer a different dimension to the sweetness. And so I'll do that with it as well to try to test its, put it through the rigors, as they say. But with this, it burned cool all the way, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So for burns cool, I gave it a 5. The total score for this blend was a 47 out of 65 with a recommendation rating of 73%. I thought this was an excellent blend. If you like the flavor of burleys, but really are put off by the sharp pungency that they give, that rough edge to them, you really should give this blend a try. It gives you a lot of that burley flavor, but because they are processed as a black Cavendish, it really rounds them out and gives a very mild and smooth smoke. It's something that you could smoke all day. For those that like sweet tobaccos that aren't aromatics, this is perfect. That Cavendish gives just enough of that sweetness to keep you happy, and it also gives you that burley flavor for those who love burleys but don't want that rough edge. So I highly suggest that anybody who wants to try a burley blend that isn't really rough, like a lot of the American type blends have a lot of that roughness because it's a very burley forward blend. With this, it's a Virginia burley. The Virginias are red Virginias. The burley has been processed as a black Cavendish, and it is amazing. Highly, highly recommended to all of you out there. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of Full Dottle. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and until the next time we see each other, I bid you farewell and happy piping. Goodbye, everyone. Woo! 11 minutes, 37 seconds. Don't forget to enlist in the Full Dottle platoon. It's easy. Just click the subscribe button. Also, hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as I upload the next episode.